I wanted to introduce you to my sketchbook. So, this is the first piece, and you can see the Gamblin sticker on the cover, on the back of the cover, because I'm a huge fan of Gamblin, and also because I bought their limited edition Yinmin Blue recently, and I spent way too much money on that for sure. It's the first synthetic blue discovered in more than 200 years by the University of Oregon in their engineering department in, I think, mid-2000s. It's recently been commercialized, and Gamblin is the only manufacturer, as far as I know, that has been able to commercialize the pigment and produce the color here. And you can find, I think, a couple of videos of people painting with it. It's nice. I mean, it's just, it's not like irreplaceable or anything, but I think, you know, anytime there's a new color, people get excited, especially me. I get really excited. Okay, so sticker. This is the first sketch for one of my larger pieces. It's honestly not very good. This was done maybe about 2 years ago, and I was just still thinking about, you know, in terms of just colored shapes and contours. I really was not thinking three-dimensionally. I was just, okay, so here's the picture, here's a shape here, here's the eyes, let's sort of copy that, here's the color, and try to match that. And I wasn't thinking about it in terms of three-dimensional objects at all. And I think you could really tell based on sort of this stuff here. I think I got the colors right. I was trying to suggest a little bit of a turn here, but yeah, not very good. But no, it's the start, I think. So this one is, I think, okay. I like the colors in here because I think the red and the green, you know, plays well with the complementary colors. I spent a long time on the hair, and I was still thinking about hair as individual strands, so I used, you know, a tiny little liner brush and go, you know, once, like, just pass it like hundreds of times to get those. But I think later on you might see that, you know, there's some improvements there. I like the hand, really, especially the elbows. I think the rendering of the three-dimensional form here was done pretty well. The fingers, pretty well too. It's hard to draw this position because most of the times you're looking at the hand from the front, so from the side of the thumbs, and I haven't had that much experience painting the back of the hand, like from the pinky, and it was a nightmare to draw, and it took me forever. You see the colors in the light and shadow areas of the face, and I really didn't understand much about, you know, edge transition or transitioning between halftones and the color changes and the temperature changes in there. And so it's literally just one color, right? You have red and then you have the white. And it makes it look very, I think, cartoonish and not at all what I was going for. And really, I needed a lot more ochre or some sort of raw sienna in there to make it pop a little bit more, right? I also, really struggle with background. I really suck at background, and you can tell from this piece, like, I had no idea what to do, so I just did like some yellow in there because I felt like it looked good. Really, I was still very much in the learning stage. So this one, I think, needs no introduction. Michelangelo, creation of Adam, I believe, and of course just the left side of that piece. There's also God on the other side, but I mean, if I wanted to make an excuse, I would say I ran out of space, but really it was because I was intimidated by God and all the angels and the cherubs. I was not able to paint that. So for this one, pretty good. Right, so this one is a portrait of one of my friends who graduated a couple of years ago from university, and this is his graduation photo. And I remember spending forever on it, just going over in subtle glazes. Like, if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see like a lot of the skin tones is just layer and layer and layer of multiple passes of umbers and Venetian red and yellow ochre, some alizarin crimson on the lips and some of the cheeks. But again, I was still looking at this in terms of shapes, like flat shapes, polygons, and triangles, circles, ovals. I wasn't thinking about this as a three-dimensional object that I could render in 2 dimensions, and thinking about perspective and things like that. And I think because of that, it looks a little bit weird because the left and right sides of the face don't exactly match up. It looks like the figure is looking towards us, right, straight on, but then you only see one side of the year and you see that side a lot more than the other side, and the year is so small because, you know, I wasn't thinking about the entire form, and it really shows. And also when I get to higher chroma values here with the purples, I have no idea what to do with the form, and you can tell that it's meant to go over and in, right, and then out, but yeah, I don't think I was very successful. I just added white here, and that's not how high value magenta colors changes form. But you know, it's a good memory, and the hat was done quite well in my opinion. Or I mean, I don't know what the I don't think it's called a hat, but it's a graduation thingy, right? All right, so this one is, I really like this one because yeah, it's really quiet. It looks like, you know, something that you see out of maybe a character design concept. At this stage I was starting to embellish some of the photo references. The photo reference had like short hair maybe down to here, and I was like, oh, it doesn't look that good. I wanted to sort of add a little bit on it. Yeah, I think I was quite successful. The only thing is there's no background at all, right? And so it just looks like the girl is just floating in midair, and that's not what I wanted at all. Yeah, that's something I really had to work on at that stage. So here's a portrait of a couple of my friends. This was done a year ago as well. And again, you know, lots of glazes, lots of hairs, individual strands, just dragging it across. Yeah, I think the face is done pretty well. And the extra red here is because I painted this off of a selfie reference that they gave me. This was done in the evening, so they had the flash on, and they also put the like red cheek filter, so it looked like they had really pink cheeks. And I was like, oh, you know what, might as well, and sort of added that pink as a, and I was really focusing on using glazes at this stage, and I was sort of doing that. I really like the way that I handled the nose on the girl here. Really well done in my opinion. Just my lack of experience with drawing clothes and hair. You look at this part, right? The highlight is just a flat line across, and depending on where the light source is, this part could be curved like this or curved down to show that it's a rounded form overall and not just a flat shape all across. This part really loses me a lot of points in terms of believability. And again, with the background, right? Like, I don't know what to do. So I just put a thin glaze of phthalo green on it. I also was starting to think a little bit now about reflected light, because I added some very subtle glazes here and here of the phthalo green that's behind, just a little bit there to give that suggestion of reflected color. The one thing that really jumps out at me is how small the guy's ear is. It was because in the photo reference, the ear was covered by, I think, branches in the background or something like that, and I couldn't see very clearly, so I was like, I need to paint a ear because I don't want to draw all those branches because I suck at landscapes. So what do? Well, luckily for me, I had a reference here of my other friend's year, and you can tell, like, it's the same year, right? I copied it so faithfully that I even preserved the size, which again is way too small for the head and for the position of the ears. Now, if the head were maybe this big, I think the year would work well, but yeah, it was terrible. I mean, it's terrible to look at. Sometimes I have the urge of just going back and trying to change it, but then I realize these are all just documents of my progress, right? I mean, now that I recognize this, next time I hopefully won't make the same mistake, and I'll think more holistically and plan a little bit ahead and not be so impulsive and just say, oh yeah, I'm just gonna, you know, paint a year and I don't care about the size, I just need a year. Yeah, so, progress. Okay, so this is, I think, one of the more popular pieces in my sketchbook among my friends. Girl of the Pearl Earring, the Scarlett Johansson version. A lot of people like it because it's a beautiful photo reference, first of all, and I think that really makes good paintings because you can just copy the composition and the colors in there. I simplified a lot, right? My color palette, I'd go to the art store and I'd buy the gold, the silver, the cad red, you know, the cad yellow, the really expensive colors, and then I end up having maybe 20, 30 colors on my palette that I don't know what to do with, because I'm just like, oh, I want to try them all. So with this piece, what do I do with the headscarf, right? Because I know that it's quite a complicated shape. So the way I did it was to use 3 colors exclusively: nickel yellow, yellow ochre, and raw umber. And the great thing about this is that they're all in the yellow family and they all have different values and different chroma. It also transitions very well because they're right in the value range of shadow, light, and then halftone. And you have a low chroma light section, a low chroma dark section, and then for your halftones, which is usually where you have the most interesting color transitions and the highest chroma colors that come through, it was perfect, these three color choices, for me to be able to paint this part. So if you look at the headscarf, it's just ultramarine blue with a little bit of burnt umber mixed in to have that sort of seamless transition down into the background. Of course, I mean, most of this is to do with the composition of the reference photo itself. I think it's incredibly gorgeous. If you also look at the clothing, it's just Venetian red with a little bit of ivory black, and it's beautiful because I just use a liner brush and just go through like this for the highlights, for the creases, and then you have the black for the folds that go in, and then the Venetian red for the ones that go out. So pretty happy with this. I wanted to also zoom in on the face a little bit. If you look at the nose here, so there's a form shadow here where the light is going away from the form, but also you have a cast shadow here. So here you have this double shadow, therefore it has to be a little bit darker than what's over here, and I feel that I was really able to capture that. I think one major criticism is the top lip. I think this is going to be a consistent theme where when colors are high chroma, it's hard for me to control the values, both in terms of being able to mix those correct colors, those correct tones, and also being actually able to perceive those values. For example, in the lips, this part, there's some reflected light, and also at this stage I was not clear on the form of the lip itself and what it looks like and what the parts are, and I think it also showed a bit. The highlight on the position, like in terms of the jaw and the shadows on the jaw, is not entirely correct. I think the halftone needs to move maybe just a little bit over here. It's a rounded form, right? And this makes it look like it's a little bit lopsided and skewed towards the left. What can you do? It's a learning process. Yeah, this is hands up, or this is hands down, sorry, one of my favorite pages, because the mask here, which I'll come to shortly, but on this page here, it's an Instagram model, and I chose the photo reference because it's an interesting composition with the neck, and also I suck at painting necks. I know that, and I was trying to find something that covered the neck so I don't have to paint it. It's like it's a cylinder, right? I mean, the neck is just a cylinder, but if you just paint a cylinder on there, it's terrible. Like I just get lost in there. I don't know. And sort of the color transitions, because there's sometimes a cast shadow on the neck from the jaw and from the head, and then there's like the skin tones there are usually a bit cooler, but sort of that transition from the jaw to the neck I can never get right. Like, it's terrible. So anyways, enough complaining. So I found this photo reference that had the neck covered. Yeah, so this took me forever. I think I repainted this maybe about 10 times. Just over and over again, because again, I was just sort of going with the photo reference and thinking, oh, like what's the distance here, what's the distance here, and literally measuring. And then I realized to really paint well and paint fast and quickly and render efficiently, I have to think in 3 dimensions and be able to render objects in 3 dimensions and think about sort of what exactly am I painting. I'm not painting a shape, right? Yes, I'm painting a person, but what is that person made of? Eyebrows, lips, forehead, nose, right? And how do these forms, how are they by themselves, and then how do they interact with the objects surrounding them? Like, for example, the eyebrows here, you can tell I just literally drew 2 lines there that are more or less in the shape of the eyebrows without thinking about form and topology and how that would affect the colors and the values on the eyebrows. And also the fact that the edge, I mean, this is just literally painted on with no thought of transitioning the edges, right? And how here, for example, there's a little bit less hair in terms of density on the eyebrows. Therefore, the edge between the skin on the forehead and the eyebrow there is not going to be as hard as towards the end of the eyebrows, right? Away from the face. It's a rounded form of the jaw and the teeth, which I really did not get here. This looks like it's going down straight, so I think it's a major criticism that I have of this piece. If you look down towards the body, I think there's something to be said about the warm shadows on the hand and the cold cast shadow that it hits on the body, and I think I did that quite well. The hands also, I mean, the colors in there are good, but the form, again, especially the right hand, is terrible. Look at the shading here. I mean, the edge transition is, you know, not at the level that I hope I want it to be. So really a lot of work that I needed to do, and I think I was a bit too ambitious with this particular piece at that stage, because I was not ready to paint something so complicated. I wasn't experienced enough, and so I really spent a lot of time rendering where I really didn't need to. I think I should have spent that time practicing the fundamentals of shape and form and value, as opposed to jumping straight to, oh, I want to create cool skin tone piece and things like that. And again, the background, right? I struggle with the background, so I just had this uniform coat of maybe 6-7 layers of alizarin crimson. I just glazed over. I don't know, it's something to work on continuously. That's one of my major themes as well. Okay, so this one is absolutely one of my favorites. First of all, because it's a painting of one of my very good friends who is going to be an engineer and will do something productive with his life, unlike me. What is also really cool about this piece, I think, is the mask. The mask is unfortunately a sign of our times, and with this piece I wanted to express the feeling that I have, that I used to take seeing people's faces, seeing all of their features for granted, right? Walking across the street or into an office or into a classroom, I could tell how people were feeling based on the set of their chins or the corner of their lips. But now with the mask, all you see are their eyes. With this piece, I also wanted to show a little bit of hope that that this situation that we find ourselves in is not permanent. I used thermochromic paint here, which is really special because it turns transparent at or above 31 degrees. Then you would see my friend's features underneath as I heat the page up. Let me show you what that looks like. I microwaved some tea, which is quite hot. I'm gonna put this on the back of this page. So mug in or mug behind. You can see a little bit of the color changing already, turning transparent. We could do a little bit more. And as the back of the page is warming up, the pigment is turning transparent. Sorry, I think I have to drink a little bit of this tea first, or it's gonna spill. So, as you can see, this is what my friend looks like. He is, of course, smiling. You also see a little bit of cobalt teal here. I believe he was just coming back from a paintball game with his girlfriend at the time. This being Canada, Vancouver. He has, of course, the cherry blossoms in the background. So you can see slowly how the colors are starting to creep back into the mask as the page is cooling down below 31 degrees. And the colors will start to effuse and then cover up his features again, and he's ready to go outside. I never get tired of looking at this. I think I've done this maybe about 10 times now. I can't do it too often because it's a chemical reaction, and there is a point of, it's like a reusable battery or a rechargeable battery. There is a limited lifespan to that because the reaction is not completely reversible. There is always going to be some products that cannot be reverted back. But for the time being, it works pretty well. So I ended up putting a little bit of clove oil into the thermochromic paint because I bought the paint itself as pigment, and then I added oil into it to make my own paint because thermochromic oil paint doesn't exist per se. But because I didn't know when I wanted to use it, I wanted to slow the drying process down until I was finished with my friend's portrait. In order to slow down the drying process, one thing that you could add is clove oil to your pigment or to your blob of paint on the palette. That would slow down the drying process of the oils. Clove oil added, a drop of clove oil to a milliliter of paint causes that paint to not, to stay wet on the palette for maybe 2 months. And usually I put just the tiniest bit of clove oil into colors that I use, but I use so sparingly, like cobalt blue, for example, or cerulean blue, where I just use it sparingly for cooling down certain areas of the skin, for example, where I constantly need it. I use it almost every day, but I use such a small amount of it that it makes sense to have that paint be constantly there, but not oxidized after 3 or 4 days, and I have to constantly reapply and then waste paint like that. So I ended up putting clove oil into this, and it took, I swear, 2 months to dry. The other thing about thermochromic paint is that it's really transparent, incredibly transparent, and so you have to really lay it on there very thickly to be able to have enough opacity and coverage to give you the effect that you want. And so the thick application coupled with the very generous application of clove oil made it that like this page I had to cover for like 3 months with a piece of wax paper to prevent the paint from getting onto the other side of the page. Okay, I think I'm gonna end it here. If you like this, please give it a like and consider subscribing. Yeah, if this video ends up being very popular, will definitely keep uploading the other pieces that are in the sketchbook. There's a lot more and they do get better. Not necessarily more interesting, but I think they do get better. Yeah, if you liked it, also check out my Instagram. All of my, or most of the paintings in the sketchbook, the other pieces can be found there. Also some ones that are not saved for YouTube, let's put it that way. So yeah, thank you for watching. Hopefully see you next time. I hope you enjoyed it, especially the thermochromic part, because yeah, go science.